Welcome to 1000 PS, welcome to a beautiful and sunny Portugal. Behind me is one of the best tracks in Europe. This is Portimão, and in front of me is a very limited edition, very exclusive Speed Triple RX. There is just going to be 1,200 of these models made worldwide, and in the UK it's going to be just under £20,000. It carries on a lot of familiarities from the RS that we tested here just a few weeks ago in biblical rain and mixed conditions. If you want to check that review, hopefully the guys will put a link on somewhere. But this keeps the same engine, keeps the same power, keeps the same torque, it keeps a lot of those rider aids, but they've basically made the bike more dynamic and more aggressive by changing the body position and rider position. To do that, they've moved the bars. So they're 69mm lower and they're 52mm further forward. The pegs have gone higher and they're further back. So they're 14.5mm higher and they are 25.5mm further back. In terms of suspension, we've still got that smart EC3 electronic suspension that we had on the RS. This is the same suspension we see on very expensive premium models like the Panigale V4S, the Street Fighter V4S, and the Honda Fireblade SP, which are obviously well north of £20,000. But what makes this bike a little bit different to the RS is the steering damper. So the steering damper is now electronic rather than manual. So before we had a Marzocchi manual adjustable steering damper, now it's by Öhlins and it's semi-active. So now it's continuously changing as you ride the bike, just like the suspension. The suspension on the RS we were hugely impressed with on both road and track, but now we're going to be able to push it to its limits. Now we're going to have the ability to ride on really grippy tyres and slicks. Some other neat little changes that you'll notice on the RX over the RS is we've got the Akropovic silencer or muffler as standard, as opposed to that slightly ugly exhaust that we had previously. The exhaust doesn't add any power or torque, it saves a little bit of weight, nearly a kilogram, but it looks significantly better. The other little design details is the dashing of carbon fibre on the front mudguard and all around the bike, and this kind of sculpted rear end and unique racing yellow. This racing yellow is something we now associate with Triumph, and for me I think it really makes it stand out and pop out as a unique and distinctive bike to everything else in their range. Today the gods have been very kind to us and given us near perfect conditions, apart from the very strong wind. So initially we're straight into the standard track mode. When you're in the standard track mode, it changes the rider aids to suit track mode, and it changes the active suspension to dynamic. So that's the most race orientated dynamic suspension. What is essentially happening is with the smart EC3 is that compression and rebound are constantly changing as you're riding the bike around the racetrack. And because you've selected dynamic, it's doing it in a race or track mode. So it's changing in compression and rebound constantly to keep you on track, to cut you some fast laps, to hold the bike on the track. Preload is standard, that is just manually adjustable. You can put in your weight, and then that gives you your recommended settings for preload, and then you can change your preload. What's interesting with this one over the RS is that the steering damper is also electronic. So at times there'll be virtually no damper, and at times the damper will be really strong because it's trying to control a tank slap or a little bit of instability. Portimão is really unique, and there's lots of crests and places where the front wheel will come up in 4th and 5th gear. And when you've got a real strong side wind, you do sometimes come down a little bit crossed up, and if you come down crossed up, you expect to twitch from the bars, but as soon as the bars land and the front wheel connects with the track, it comes straight back into line, and it feels like this electronic suspension is doing something. It feels like the electronic damper is controlling any movement when the front wheel is landing. So obviously the damper knows that you're accelerating or knows when the front wheel is off the ground, and then it acts accordingly. And equally on brake entry, it knows that you're braking very heavily and it knows you want to steer, so I assume that the damper is a lot less. To have this steering damper that is less going in and more coming out and controls any movement and adds stability and confidence is a significant step over the manual suspension and the manual damper that you have on the RS that is just constant. It's a little bit difficult to explain because you'd never want to feel a damper. A damper should be doing the job by itself. And you never really feel it working. You never think, oh, the damper saved that potential tank slapper. But stability and landing crossed up wheelies have been almost perfect. It's really hard to find any fault with that front end. When we tested the RS, the conditions were a bit mixed, but today we've had the ability to really push the handle and push the brakes. The Brembo dilemmas and the ABS braking are really strong. In track mode, you've got conventional ABS. There's no ABS on the back and it's not lean sensitive. It's just conventional ABS. And it's kind of really there if you just make a really bad mistake. So it's kind of riding with no ABS in many ways. But the braking is so strong. It's kind of to the point where the weakness of the braking is not the actual brakes, the forks, or the pitch, or the grip. It's the strength of the rider, because the braking is absolutely fierce and incredibly strong. It's the same with the power and the speed. With 180 horsepower, exactly the same as the RS, it's not in the 200 horsepower club. It can't match the Ducati Street Fighter, it can't match the M1000R from BMW, it can't match the MV. But on the end of this straight, with such a strong headwind, I can't make full use of the power because I can't physically hold on after a 30-minute session. So do you need that extra 20 horsepower? On a day like today, on a track like this, then I'd argue possibly not. It would make it even harder to ride. And this is exceptionally easy to ride for such a big, powerful, torquey British mule. It's a bit strange because you expect it to be this animal, but it's kind of in many ways not. And you can even afford to short shift and take it steady. There's a few places on this track where you could rev it out in third and make the track physical, you'd make the track hard work, but I don't want to do that all day long in half-hour sessions. I want to relax a little bit, so I can afford to take a gear higher, use 4th instead of 3rd or 5th instead of 4th. Coming out the final corner should be screaming in 4th, but I'm short shifting to 5th and just calming it all down, but still putting in some real fast laps. The RX is significantly different to the RS in terms of how it feels, in terms of its sporting nature, in terms of its attitude, but obviously we've only ridden it on track, it'll be a little bit different on the road. I didn't think by just changing the rider position and the bars and the pegs and a few little tweaks that it would make a significant difference, but it's made a sizable difference between the standard bike, which I was impressed by. So as you can possibly tell, that I'm full of praise for the RX. I love the unique styling, I love the unique look, I love that Triumph have done us something a little bit different and given us a limited edition model that's got a little bit aggression and a little bit more edge. In terms of downside, same kind of slight negativity I had with the RS. The clock actuation is still a little bit slow, it's not as fluid and intuitive as I thought it would be. And when you have the wheelie control on, the reintervention after the wheelie control is a little slow. But for more experienced riders like myself, we can trim that and change that. What's been interesting on this test is the ability to add and change the suspension without really knowing a lot about suspension. So a lot of you will be asking questions about how many clicks of compression and how many clicks of rebound and what have you changed. But Öhlins and Triumph make it very simple, and you add brake support or initial acceleration support or cornering support. So you're adding to an area where you think the bike is lacking, and that's what I've done today. Just trim the bike to my kind of lazy style and just trim the rear a bit just to give it a little bit more control coming out of the corners, and trim the wheelie control to the way I like to ride, because I'm a little bit old school and I used to prefer the back brake rather than electronics. You don't need to be a suspension wizard to trim the bike to how you want to ride. And equally with the rider aids, you don't have to be in track mode. You can quite easily ride in road mode, have cornering ABS, have cornering traction, have loads of wheelie control, and just enjoy it and have some fun. I didn't think the RX would lap Portimão as quick and as fast and as easy as it has done. And as I said, the only limitation in terms of lap time is my physical strength holding on down the straight and my ability to hold on onto the brakes. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a bump stop on the back seat just to make it a little bit easier. And obviously, the big test of this bike is when we're going to put it against the competition. We mentioned the M1000R, we mentioned the new Street Fighter V4S, we also mentioned the MV that are in the 200 horsepower club. So we're 20 to 25 horsepower down, but I don't think it's going to be that much down in terms of lap times, because it's very easy to make full use of all 180 horsepower. There's no horsepower going to waste. And when you ride a big, fast, naked bike, arguably you can't get that last 20%, that last 10%, because physically you can't hold on. How much power do you need on a naked bike? The Aprilia is also in there, the KTM is also in there, and it'll be interesting to see where the RX sits. For me, before, when we rode the old RS with manual all-in suspension, the old Speed Triple was behind the competition. I think it was behind the standard S1000R and arguably the Tuono. But now I think it's kind of stepped up and elevated above that class. And then with the RX, I think we've stepped up one step even closer. I think the RX is really knocking on the door of that 200 horsepower club without having 200 horsepower. But the big question is going to be when we get the competition together, and it's also going to be interesting to see what the RX is like on the road. The RS was soft and manageable with the EC3 semi-active suspension, so the RX should be the same. So, hope you've enjoyed the test. Thankfully, the weather gods have played a kind hand. It's been perfect weather. The bike has really surprised me how well it laps Portimão, how fast it laps, and how kind of easy it is without being overpowering or scary. It is an easy bike to ride to a certain level. It just needs some holding on to. But if you've got any more technical questions or you want to know any more specific details, fire them below. You know what to do. Click the subscribe and we'll carry on to the next one.